Surrounded by monstrous insects, the two stand ready for a fight. The creature's eyes gleam with a cold, predatory light. He asks his companion Rebecca if she is prepared for what's to come. With a determined look, he declares it's time to move forward. But elsewhere, in a nearby forest, a frantic chase is underway. A party of adventurers struggles to land a hit on a lightning-fast creature. Their leader grows frustrated, watching their target easily evade them. He turns his anger on the party's debuffer, blaming him for the failure. In a cruel move, he shoves the boy forward, ordering him to become bait. The terrified kid can only watch as the monster closes in for the kill. But the monster isn't the one to strike first. Instead, a blast from his own party sends the boy flying. The leader smirks, having used the distraction to land the final blow. His attack tears right through the creature. As the party celebrates their victory, the boy is left forgotten in the mud. The leader sneers, mocking the kid for being a useless curse user. The others join in, calling him a pathetic excuse for an adventurer. They tell Luca he should be grateful they even let him play a part. This has always been his life, treated as nothing more than a pack mule. A sudden rock slide erupts behind him, catching him completely by surprise. His party members yell at him to get moving, but Luca is frozen in disbelief. The leader screams at him to abandon the gear, a cruel offer of forgiveness. But it's too late. The ground crumbles beneath his feet. He plummets into the chasm, reaching out for a hand that will never come. His eyes widen in sheer terror as he falls. He reaches for his party, who simply watch from the cliff's edge. A torrent of rock and debris follows him down, burying him under the weight of their betrayal. At the bottom of the ravine, a monstrous maw opens up to swallow him whole, and as his life ends, the leader turns his back without a second thought. But death is not the end for Luca. Instead, he awakens with a strange light emanating from his wrist. His eyes open to a serene grotto where a goddess-like figure stands in the water. He can hardly believe it, thinking he's meeting a deity in his final moments. With what little strength he has, he reaches out toward the ethereal vision. The woman steps from the water, revealing she has waited for centuries. She gently places her hand over his, covering the strange markings. Kneeling beside him, she tells our boy that this is the day she has long awaited. The scene then shifts to several days later, back at the Adventurers Guild. Inside, Luca's former party members are having a tense discussion. The leader, arrogant as ever, angrily tells his companion to be quiet. She confronts the leader, holding up what appears to be Luca's death certificate. She screams his name, Adolf, demanding to know what happened. He slams his drink down, shouting that the useless curse user was swept away in the rock slide. Adolf tells her that should be the end of it. But Rebecca looks up in horror, asking if they just abandoned him. The leader simply takes a sip, his silence a chilling confirmation. The other party members chime in, complaining that they're the real victims for losing all their gear. They mock Luca, calling him a pathetic excuse for an adventurer who couldn't even fight. Rebecca clutches her chest, horrified by their cruelty and remembering the boy they left behind. A memory surfaces of a younger Luca, vowing to become strong so no one else would suffer his fate. He once told a little girl that becoming a great adventurer might help him understand the curse on their village. With a hopeful smile, he promised to keep pushing forward for that very reason. Back in the present, Rebecca screams, knowing how they crushed that innocent dream. Adolf roars back that Luca was weak, so he died, and she needs to stop complaining. Another party member grabs her, telling a mere commoner not to talk back to real adventurers. Rebecca is frozen in shock by his aggression, but his hand is suddenly stopped. A new figure has appeared, effortlessly blocking the man's arm. The bully stares at his hand, stunned by the force that stopped him. Standing before them is Luca, returned from the grave, gently comforting Rebecca. He turns to Rebecca, assuring her that everything is okay now. Still in shock, she can barely whisper his name, asking if it's truly him. Luca offers a gentle smile, apologizing for making her worry. His hand tightens around the death certificate, a silent promise of what's to come. The bully scoffs, calling Luca lucky for somehow surviving the rock slide. But Luca turns to face them all, calmly stating that he did, in fact, die down there. The man is taken aback, enraged by the boy's defiant tone. Luca's eyes are cold as he reminds them that they were the ones who abandoned him. He gestures to their recovered gear, telling them to carry their own luggage. Crushing the paper, he declares he's done being their pack mule. The bully clenches his fist, asking if Luca hit his head during the fall. But Luca simply turns to Rebecca, telling her it's time for them to go. As he walks away, the adventurer is left seething in the background. The man screams after him, reminding him that he's nothing but a bottom feeder. He roars that a useless curse user has no right to talk back to him. Luca calmly states that even a curse can be broken by a miracle. The bully suddenly looks down at his own arm in shock. The curse marks that once covered his skin have completely disappeared. Before he can react, Luca closes the distance in an instant and slams the man's head down onto the table with brutal force. The sudden violence sends the entire guild into an uproar. A sharp click of heels announces the arrival of someone in charge. A guild official storms forward, demanding to know the meaning of the commotion. The other party members panic, realizing they've drawn unwanted attention. She declares that fighting within the guild is strictly forbidden. Demanding an explanation, she's told that Adolf started another fight, but then Luca retaliated. The woman is stunned, finding it hard to believe that Luca was responsible for this. Meanwhile, Adolf groans on the floor, unable to comprehend how he was so easily defeated. The other adventurers look on in sheer terror, finally grasping the change in Luca. But Adolf's confusion quickly turns to pure rage, vowing he will never forgive this humiliation. Rebecca's voice cuts through the chaos, calling out Luca's name. He and Rebecca quickly make their exit from the guild hall. She hurries to catch up, asking him to wait for her. He turns, concerned that she might be hurt after the commotion. But she quickly brushes off her exhaustion. Instead, she excitedly praises him for how he handled Adolf. She asks what kind of special training he did to get so strong. Luca clarifies that it wasn't training. His curse has finally vanished. With the curse lifted, his body is no longer suppressed and can move freely. His mind flashes back to 4 years ago, when that same curse destroyed half his village. He remembers how the curse had weakened his body, making it impossible to even swing a sword properly. For years, his true potential had been completely suppressed. But now, with a confident smile, he knows he can finally fight back. Rebecca asks if he's truly okay, worried he'll get hurt again. With tears of joy, she expresses how happy she is that he's finally free. He smiles warmly, telling her this day only came because she always stood by his side. His heartfelt gratitude leaves her blushing and completely flustered. She tries to play it off, but Luca simply says he's glad to have a friend like her. Hearing this, a wave of relief washes over her. But beneath his calm exterior, Luca's fist clenches with unspoken resolve. He then asks Rebecca if she has a little more time. He wants to introduce her to the one who saved his life. Rebecca panics, insisting she's a mess after their recent ordeal. But Luca tells her she looks as lovely as ever, causing her to blush. He thoughtfully lists how her hair and gear are always perfectly maintained. He assures her that his benefactor understands the life of an adventurer. Still flustered, she seems to be looking for a way out. But if it's what Luca wants, she reluctantly agrees. As they walk, he explains the place is nearby but has a little secret. She questions what he means, but Luca just offers a knowing smile. Luca holds out his hand, asking her to trust him. He gently takes hers, telling her it's time to go. The moment their hands touch, a brilliant flash of light erupts between them. She flinches back, completely caught off guard by the sudden phenomenon. In an instant, they vanish from the street and reappear elsewhere, with Luca telling her it's safe to look. She slowly lowers her hand, unsure of what she's about to see. He leads her into a beautiful hidden garden where a familiar figure awaits. The goddess who saved him stands before them, welcoming Rebecca to her sacred domain. Luca introduces her as Selemis, the goddess of peace, leaving Rebecca utterly speechless. Rebecca can only stare, her mind struggling to catch up with reality. Her brain short-circuits at the revelation, a reaction Selemis finds rather amusing. She turns to Luca, stammering about how this could possibly be real. Selemis explains that while such meetings are rare, the reason for this one is quite simple. She brought Rebecca here because Luca is now something more. He is now the goddess's chosen agent. The words hang in the air as he looks at his friend. Rebecca is floored, admitting she always thought these were just fairy tales. Selemis understands her skepticism, as it's a common belief, but she reveals that agents have always existed, often hiding in plain sight to avoid conflict. Selemis explains that each of the world's 10 gods chooses an agent, granting them special powers to fulfill a divine mission. With a gentle smile, she says that upon meeting Luca, she knew he was worthy of that honor. Rebecca turns to Luca, worried that he's sharing a secret far too important for her to know. But Selemis clarifies that it was her who suggested revealing the truth. She explains that an agent's life is often a lonely one, set apart from ordinary people, and not all gods are benevolent. Some, like the god of destruction, are cruel and hostile. Luca adds that on the path ahead, he'll need someone who truly understands him. That's why he chose to confide in the one person he trusts more than anyone. He admits it was the goddess's idea, but he wholeheartedly agreed. He just wanted Rebecca to know the truth so she could be at ease. He remembers losing his family and his home, yet somehow managing to survive. A flashback shows him as a child, alone and with nothing left in the world. But even then, there was one person who never abandoned him. It was Rebecca who found him and offered him a reason to keep going. Luca then reveals there's one more thing the goddess told him. Salamis turns to Rebecca, offering to use her divine power to cure her mother's illness. The sudden, miraculous offer leaves Rebecca completely stunned. Luca simply smiles, having known this was coming. He takes her hand, telling her that now he wants to be her strength. With tears in her eyes, she listens as he asks her to finally let him help her in return. Salamis tells them they are free to use her sacred domain whenever they wish. She then turns to Luca, giving him his first mission as her chosen agent. He is to protect those who are in need of saving, a task he readily accepts. In another flash of light, they are transported back to the city streets. Luca explains that they can only enter and exit her realm from that specific spot. As they walk, Rebecca remarks that it's been too long since he's visited her home. She offers him a meal anytime, but Luca senses that something is troubling her. Suddenly, a door flies open and a young girl comes running out, calling for her sister. The frantic child, Katie, explains that something terrible has happened to their mother. Rebecca's face drains of color as she learns their mother has collapsed and won't wake up. Rebecca bursts through the door, her heart pounding with dread. Inside, she finds her mother collapsed on the floor, unresponsive. She rushes to her side, desperately trying to wake her, but Luca remains calm, quickly asking Katie to run and find a doctor. The little girl immediately dashes out the door to get help. Rebecca's panic escalates as she cries out her mother's name, until Luca's voice cuts through her fear. He gently takes her by the shoulders, forcing her to look at him. He assures her that everything will be all right, promising to handle it before Katie returns. For now, he just needs her help moving her mother to the bed. With her mother now resting in bed, Luca tells her to just hold on a little longer. He turns to Rebecca, his expression serious, and tells her he's about to begin. Placing his hand over the woman's chest, a gentle light begins to glow. His eyes widen with intense focus as he channels this newfound power. The light from his hand grows stronger, pulsing with divine energy. He can see the source of the illness, a dark curse afflicting her very organs. Rebecca can only watch, her hands clasped in a desperate prayer. With a surge of power, Luca unleashes the goddess's gift to dispel the curse. Sometime later, the doctor who Katie fetched examines the now stable patient. He's completely baffled, explaining that her once critical symptoms have miraculously vanished. The doctor explains that her recovery is a miracle, leaving the family in stunned relief. Luca watches quietly from the doorway, a faint smile on his face. Her mother believes a god must have been watching over them as Luca slips away unnoticed. He walks away, reflecting on the dark power he just neutralized. A memory of Salamis surfaces, explaining that the god of destruction spread such misfortune and she cannot let it stand. But before he can dwell on it, a voice from the present calls out his name. Rebecca rushes up behind him, calling for him to wait. He worries something is wrong, but she's just out of breath, afraid he'd leave without letting her thank him properly. With tears of pure gratitude, she thanks him for saving her mother's life. Her words seem to strengthen his resolve, his eyes filled with a new sense of purpose. Rebecca waves a cheerful goodbye, promising to see him tomorrow. Alone with his thoughts, Luca wonders what his next step should be. He clenches his fist, determined to find a way to help people like her. Salamis appears before him, telling Luca she's glad she chose him. She lays out his first tasks, raise his adventurer rank, and move her divine statue to a safe location. But she adds that there's one more thing, perhaps the most important of all. Above everything else, she wants him to enjoy his new life as an adventurer. Luca looks up, taking in her heartfelt words. He agrees to her terms as the scene transitions to the city at night. The next day, he finds himself back at the Adventurers Guild. He approaches the guild receptionist, ready to start his new life. The woman asks if he's planning to take on a quest all by himself. With a confident smile, Luca confirms that he is. He hands her his party withdrawal form along with his first solo quest request. She warns him that repeated failures could lead to his license being revoked. After all, an adventurer's license provides crucial benefits like travel exemptions and fair trade. She stresses that their work directly impacts the safety of the citizens. With the formalities complete, she returns his card and he thanks her politely. As he leaves, Salamis appears beside him, remarking on the receptionist's cold demeanor. But Luca understands, explaining that it's simply a reflection of his past failures. But just as he's about to leave, a familiar voice calls out his name. It's Rebecca, now dressed in her adventuring gear with a bow in hand. She thanks him again for saving her mother, who is now recovering well. Knowing he's heading out on a quest, she says she wants to come along and help. With a determined smile, she insists they go together. Luca agrees, promising they'll return as soon as it gets dangerous. Their quest takes them to a nearby forest. Their targets are horned rabbits, a low-level monster known for being quick. From the bushes, they watch the pack, waiting for the right moment. Luca observes that the pack is larger than expected, and they'll need a strategy to approach without being detected. He turns to Selemis, asking for her guidance on the matter. The goddess casually suggests he just use magic to wipe them all out at once. Luca realizes that his contract should have granted him knowledge of elemental magic and agrees to try. Rebecca asks in disbelief if he can actually use attack magic now. Luca simply holds out his hand, recalling the goddess's words, and unleashes a powerful fireball spell. The horned rabbits are startled by the sudden incantation. A massive sphere of fire descends upon the entire pack. The resulting explosion tears through the forest with devastating force. In the aftermath, both Luca and Rebecca are left speechless by the display of power. Luca looks completely drained, questioning the sheer scale of that attack. But Selemis remains unbothered, calmly sipping her tea amidst the chaos. She explains that his contract grants him enhanced magic and a near-infinite supply of power. She then casually apologizes, having forgotten to mention his strength is dozens of times greater than a normal mage's. But the massive explosion didn't go unnoticed. Someone's sharp ears pick up the sound. Rebecca quickly warns Luca that they have company approaching. She panics, realizing there's no way to explain the bizarre scene of flash-frozen rabbits. Thinking fast, Luca grabs her hand and pulls her away from the scene. Just moments later, 2 other adventurers arrive, finding the area strangely empty. They stare in awe at the massive crater, wondering if a dragon had passed through. The adventurers dismiss the idea of a dragon, wondering what kind of powerful mage could do this. They decide to investigate the area, hoping to find the source of the explosion. Once they're gone, Luca breathes a sigh of relief from his hiding spot. He turns to Rebecca, trying to reassure her with 2 fluffy branches he's holding. She can't help but burst into laughter at his ridiculous attempt at camouflage. With the danger past, she playfully teases him, telling him to hurry up. Later, their quest leads them to a tree full of ripe fruit. Luca uses a combination of wind and water magic to harvest them all at once. Rebecca is amazed, but worries they won't be able to carry it all back. But Luca reveals another new ability, storing the fruit in a magical inventory. He explains that the divine storage also keeps everything perfectly fresh. Rebecca is ecstatic, realizing they can hunt without worrying about weight or spoilage. She recalls how difficult it was for her uncle to hunt boars, which makes Luca a little nervous. She reassures him they're usually solitary, so they shouldn't run into one. But just as she says that, a heavy hoof stomps down right in front of them. The sudden tremor catches them both completely by surprise. Before them stands a massive tusked boar, its eyes burning with rage. The creature lowers its head, preparing to charge at a moment's notice. Rebecca can't understand why the beast is so incredibly hostile. Its eyes gleam with pure fury as it lets out a deafening roar. Luca prepares another fireball, ready to fight back. But he suddenly stops, realizing they can't attack the beast. Even Selemis notices something is amiss. Rebecca urges him to run, but Luca has already made his move. He scoops her up and leaps out of the way just as the boar charges. The massive creature crashes through the trees right where they were standing. Once they're safe, Rebecca asks what just happened. He explains the boar is enraged because of a small creature stuck to its nose. Another creature on the ground begs him to save its friend from the spiky parasite. Luca considers his options, knowing the boar's hide is too tough for a simple knife. He explains the plan. A precise blow to the side should knock it out without harming the creature. He tells Rebecca to stay back, insisting he'll handle this alone so she doesn't get hurt. He asks her to wait for him in a safe spot. But Rebecca firmly refuses to stand by and do nothing. She reminds him that she came along specifically to help him. Besides, she adds, pointing to her gear, hunting is her specialty, and she's far more experienced at this than he is. She tells him they should work together to solve this. With a plan in mind, she stomps her foot on the ground, drawing the beast's attention. As the boar charges her, Luca prepares to make his move. She explains that boars are fast and can easily change direction. So if she dodges at the very last second, the beast will be momentarily confused by her sudden disappearance. Using the boar's momentum, Luca launches himself into the air. He knows that when a target loses its mark, it hesitates for just an instant. And in that instant, he summons shards of ice, erupting into a massive pillar that traps the beast in its tracks. He immediately calls out to Rebecca, signaling that it's her turn. She's already in position, her arrow aimed with deadly precision. The enraged boar is now a perfect stationary target. The ice holds the creature fast, giving Rebecca the opening she needs. With a single focused glance, she knows this will be the final blow. Her arrow flies from the bowstring and strikes the beast in its one vulnerable spot. The massive boar collapses to the ground, finally subdued. Rebecca lands with a confident smile, asking Luca if he was impressed. She looks at him, waiting for his reaction with a hint of pride. Luca is absolutely blown away, praising her incredible precision. She gets flustered by the compliments, trying to brush them off. But he insists, calling her the most skilled archer he's ever known. She looks down, a little shy from all the attention. With a bashful smile, she quietly thanks him for the compliment. But their celebration is cut short as Luca remembers the real reason for the fight. He rushes over to the small creature, promising to help its friend right away. The spiky parasite struggles as he carefully works to remove it from the boar's nose. With the creature finally free, Luca asks the goddess what exactly it is. She explains that this is a mirage chameleon, an incredibly rare type of pixie. The word rare catches Luca completely off guard. She explains that their gentle nature and unique abilities made them targets for criminals. As Rebecca gently cleans the creature, Luca asks what kind of powers it possesses. As Luca holds the creature, it begins to vibrate intensely in his hands. The shaking grows more and more violent, until the pixie suddenly releases a cloud of sparkling dust right in his face. The strange mist quickly expands, enveloping both of them completely. Rebecca calls out through the haze, asking if Luca is all right. But as the dust settles, her concern turns to utter disbelief. Standing in Luca's place is an old man, just as confused as she is. Rebecca can only stare in shock as the man wonders what's happened to him. Salemis explains that this is the chameleon's unique ability, a transformative mist. Rebecca turns to the old man, still struggling to believe that this is really Luca. Luca, in his elderly form, tries to reassure Rebecca that the effect is only temporary. The little chameleon seems to sense her worry, urging him to change back. And just like that, the mist dissipates, revealing Luca is back to normal. The tiny creature then hops from his hand and playfully climbs onto his shoulder, much to Rebecca's amusement. But the chameleon's stomach suddenly rumbles with a tiny growl. Luca realizes the little guy is just hungry after its ordeal. The cute scene leaves Rebecca flustered as Luca offers the creature some fruit. He smiles, suggesting they all take a break and have something to eat. Rebecca agrees, trying to hide her blush by saying it's for the chameleon's sake. While Rebecca expertly butchers the boar, Luca suggests they make the most of their hunt. She soon returns with some wild herbs she found as Luca prepares a small campfire. With the boar meat, herbs, and fruit he gathered, they have all the ingredients they need. Luca explains that the rest of the boar can be safely stored in the goddess's realm. He then uses the fruit he gathered earlier to marinate the fresh cuts of meat. While the flavors soak in, they both work on carving skewers from nearby branches. He then seasons the meat with the salty herbs, preparing it for the fire. The little chameleon can hardly contain its excitement, drooling as the food cooks. Before long, a plate of perfectly grilled boar skewers is ready to eat. Rebecca doesn't hesitate for a second, taking a massive, enthusiastic bite. Her eyes light up with delight at the incredible flavor. She happily digs in while Luca watches with a gentle smile. He takes a bite himself, savoring the fruits of their labor. But back at the guild, the mood is far less cheerful. The receptionist coldly informs Adolf's party that their quest was a failure. She lists their shortcomings, from failing to hunt rabbits to letting a boar rampage through the fields. With a stern warning, she tells them to choose their next mission more carefully. Nearby, the little chameleon slips and falls from Luca's shoulder. The sound catches Adolf's attention, his eyes widening with a flicker of recognition. He complains about his party size, but the receptionist tells him there are plenty of quests for a team of 3. She reminds him that with Luca gone, they'll need to find a new member for their party. The news that Luca actually quit sends Adolf into a silent rage. His eyes burn with hatred, vowing to make the boy pay for this defiance. But far from the guild's tension, Luca and Rebecca are simply enjoying their meal. Later, Rebecca walks through town with her younger sister Katie. The little girl looks up at her, a knowing question on her lips. She asks Rebecca if she has feelings for Luca, causing her to blush furiously. Rebecca tries to deny it, but her sister sees right through the panicked excuse. Katie encourages her to just confess, insisting that she's more than cute enough. But Rebecca is left a flustered mess, unable to handle her sister's teasing. Katie warns her that if she hesitates, Luca might find a girlfriend in another town. The thought of them forming their own 2-person party crosses Rebecca's mind. But her sister's antics at the market quickly snap her back to reality. As she walks, she spots Adolf and his remaining party member, still bitter about their recent failures. The sight seems to only strengthen her resolve. A memory surfaces of a promise made long ago not to be reckless. She remembers a time when it was just the two of them, dreaming of the future. But now she worries that Luca's new path will eventually lead him away from their town. She clutches her bag, contemplating what it truly means to be an adventurer. Meanwhile, Adolf and his companion head off, completely oblivious to the lives they've changed. Luca and Salamis share a look of quiet determination. Their mission brings them to a local church, a place where the faithful believe God will save the righteous. Inside, a priest dismisses his congregation, ending the day's service with a final prayer. But one elderly man lingers behind, watching the others leave with a thoughtful expression. It's Luca in disguise, telling the little chameleon on his shoulder to stay quiet. He approaches the altar, addressing the statue of the very goddess he serves. Salamis appears beside him, pleased to find a church dedicated to her in this town. She remarks on the statue's exquisite detail, and Luca agrees it's so well made that no one would notice if it were replaced. He decides they will return later that night to carry out their plan. But as he turns to leave, a church official stops him, questioning his presence. Luca realizes it was a good thing he kept his disguise active. He tries to slip away, but the flustered official calls out to him. Luca apologizes for lingering, explaining he was just admiring the beautiful statue. But the man insists he wait, saying he can't accept a donation without a name. He grabs Luca's arm, desperate to have a word with him. The official's eyes dart between the statue and the cloaked figure, a wild idea forming in his mind. He wonders if this mysterious visitor could be a divine messenger. The man's face lights up as he asks if Luca is an agent of the goddess Salamis. Luca's expression hardens, realizing his cover has been blown. The official pleads with him, begging Luca to hear him out. The official insists that he can sense Luca's divine power, even if it's hidden from sight. He introduces himself as Eppo, a priest of Salamis, who knew at once that Luca was her agent. Eppo explains that his own ancestors served the goddess, and he's heard the stories passed down through his family. With a hopeful expression, he tells Luca that he wants to offer his assistance. Luca can't help but wonder if this is all just a strange coincidence. Sensing his doubt, Eppo asks him to wait just a moment while he fetches proof of his lineage. He returns out of breath, admitting this is the first time he's ever met an agent in person. The priest then presents a long, cloth-wrapped object, revealing a magnificent sword that his family has protected for generations. Even Salamis is taken aback, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Salamis confirms that this man is indeed the descendant of a former ally. She tells Luca that the sword is proof enough, and that they can trust him. With his goddess's blessing, Luca agrees, much to the priest's tearful delight. He then pulls back his hood, letting the transformative mist fade away. Standing before the priest as his true self, he formally introduces himself as Luca. The priest is overcome with emotion, honored to finally meet the goddess's chosen agent. He marvels at the transformation, realizing it was a divine miracle performed by the little creature. But Eppo's sudden intensity catches our boy completely off guard. The priest begs for the chance to assist him in any way he can. Seeing the man's sincerity, Luca decides to accept his generous offer of help. He explains that he's looking for a safe place to move the goddess's statue, a mission she entrusted to him. The priest is moved to tears, honored that the goddess would place her trust in him and vowing to help. Luca then reveals the true statue, and Eppo eagerly offers to prepare a place for her immediately. The flustered priest practically leaps into action, ready to serve his goddess. He's completely overwhelmed by her divine presence, and Luca can tell the man's devotion is genuine. Standing before his home, Eppo swears he will protect the sacred statue with his very life. He then asks where Luca's journey will take him next, but our boy hasn't decided yet. Salamis suggests they visit the capital, where a festival for the new queen is being held. Eppo excitedly adds that his church has a branch in the capital and offers them a place to stay. Luca agrees, but asks the priest to keep his status as an agent a secret, a promise Eppo readily makes. Luca asks the priest if he has any other abilities besides sensing divine power. Eppo quickly clarifies that he's the only one in his family with such a gift. Luca considers this, realizing the chances of his identity being exposed are slim. The priest believes this power was a divine sign, meant to guide him to Luca. He then offers the sacred sword to our boy, insisting he take it. Eppo explains that it's a keepsake from his ancestor, who never traveled without it. The blade is a dungeon relic, indestructible and capable of enhancing the wielder's strength. He notes that Luca's current knife is hardly suitable for the battles ahead. Luca understands that the priest's ancestor would have wanted him to have it. With a grateful nod, he accepts the powerful weapon from his new ally. But the priest isn't finished, suddenly shoving a small jar into Luca's hands. He insists Luca take this divine herb, a gift he can use or sell as he pleases. As Luca leaves, the priest waves him off, praying for his success on the journey ahead. Later that day, Luca arrives at a humble inn to rest for the night. The innkeeper grumbles about the festival in the capital, complaining that he can't even pay his rent. He tells Luca to just give up being an adventurer, assuming he's had another fruitless day. But Luca simply places a heavy bag of coins on the counter for his stay. The innkeeper's eyes narrow with suspicion, immediately accusing him of theft. Luca calmly explains that the money is his reward from a successful quest. He then asks for a room, leaving the old man to stare at the bag in disbelief. The old man inspects the coin, still not believing that Luca earned it honestly. Luca just smirks, sarcastically suggesting he took down a calamity-class monster. The innkeeper decides he doesn't care, pocketing the money for the room. But before Luca can leave, the man hands him a letter that was left for him. He explains that someone dropped it off, insisting it was for Luca. Luca's expression darkens, a sense of dread washing over him. Suddenly, the inn's door is kicked open with a violent crash. The innkeeper jumps back in shock, startled by the sudden intrusion. But when he looks up, Luca has already vanished into the night. The scene shifts to a dilapidated house on the outskirts of town. Inside, Adolf waits patiently in the shadows. He crushes a piece of bait in his hand, while Rebecca and her sister are bound and gagged on the floor. Their hands are tied, leaving them completely helpless. The two can only watch in terror, unable to call for help. A sound from the doorway finally catches his attention. He clenches his fist, knowing his target has arrived. Luca stands in the doorway, his expression grim. His own hand tightens with barely contained rage. Adolf smirks, mocking Luca for foolishly coming unarmed. Rebecca can only watch in terror, unable to cry out for help. Luca's eyes widen in horror as he sees what Adolf has done. The former leader holds a blade to her throat, warning Luca not to move a muscle. He grabs her by the hair, sneering that a bottom feeder has no right to defy him. His mind flashes back to a time when Luca was nothing but a pathetic curse user at his feet. But his rage boils over as he shoves Rebecca aside. He roars that he is the strong one here, not Luca. The curse marks reappear on his skin as he screams that Luca has no right to look down on him. He vows to prove once and for all just how useless our boy truly is. With a final maddened scream, he lunges forward to strike. Rebecca can't bear to watch, shielding her eyes from the inevitable clash. Her eyes widen in terror, fearing for Luca's life. She tries to scream his name, but the sound is lost behind the gag. But Luca moves in an instant, blocking the attack with his simple knife. His eyes are cold and unwavering as he stares down his former leader. He glances back at the two sisters, his resolve hardening. He then raises his hand, not to strike, but to cast a spell. A powerful gust of wind erupts from his palm, sending Adolf flying across the room. The force of the impact shatters the bully's sword into pieces. Finally able to breathe, Rebecca gasps in stunned relief. He tells Rebecca it wasn't her fault, urging her to take her sister somewhere safe. But she looks back in fear, asking what he plans to do now. He turns away, vowing to make Adolf pay for dragging her into this mess. With a heavy heart, he apologizes for all the pain she's had to endure. As he steps forward to end this, Rebecca calls out his name in desperation, but Luca simply summons the sacred sword, ready for the final confrontation. Across the room, Adolf slowly rises from the rubble, his armor steaming. His face is a mask of pure hatred, the curse mark still etched into his skin. The dark symbols seem to pulse with a malevolent energy as he glares at our boy. A terrifying specter looms over him, a vision of the cruel god who demands the weak be crushed. The specter's voice echoes in his mind, telling him that if he is not the strong one, then he is the weak one. Adolf screams as the dark power of the curse surges through his entire body. Consumed by the god's influence, he roars, ready to unleash its full destructive force. But Luca simply watches, his expression calm and completely unfazed. He effortlessly parries the first blow, the sacred sword holding firm against Adolf's rage. His grip is steady, easily absorbing the force of the attack. Adolf follows up with another brutal strike, trying to crush him with sheer power. He then unleashes a sweeping attack meant to cleave our boy in two. But his frustration grows as Luca continues to deflect every single blow. With a graceful flip, Luca easily evades the clumsy assault. Adolf's eyes turn black, consumed by the curse's power. But Luca remains perfectly still, his resolve unshaken. From the doorway, Rebecca and her sister can only watch in fear. She realizes that the marks on Adolf are the same as the curse that once plagued Luca, the very same curse that destroyed his entire village years ago. Her little sister asks if everything will be all right. Rebecca forces a smile, insisting that Luca is strong enough to win. But she knows this must be a painful reminder of his past, even as she holds on to hope. Back in the fight, Luca slides back, deflecting another powerful blow. Rebecca's eyes are drawn to a sudden flash of light from the sword. But the fight is interrupted by the arrival of Adolf's other party member. Rebecca quickly shields her sister from the new threat. The mage gathers fire in her hands, ready to unleash a devastating spell. But Rebecca rushes forward, determined to stop the attack herself. With a powerful shove, she knocks the mage off balance. The woman stumbles, completely caught off guard by the sudden intervention. Rebecca shouts that she's just returning the favor from their encounter at the guild. She declares that she won't let them interfere with Luca's fight. The other party member is stunned by Rebecca's sudden act of defiance. Seeing an opening, she turns her blade on Katie, forcing Rebecca to freeze in terror. The mage threatens Rebecca, ordering her to become a hostage once more. But before she can make a move, something flies through the air. The woman cries out in shock, as a wooden bucket slams squarely into her face, sent flying by the little chameleon. She's left completely dazed, unable to comprehend what just happened, and with that, she's knocked completely unconscious. With the interference handled, Luca turns his full attention back to Adolf. The former leader can only scream in frustration, unable to land a single blow. Luca effortlessly lifts him into the air, pinning him against the wall. With the fight all but over, our boy takes a final, deliberate step forward. With a single devastating punch, Luca sends Adolf flying back. The bully screams, unable to comprehend how he could possibly lose. He collapses to the ground, completely and utterly defeated. Luca looks down at him, his expression devoid of any pity. But as Adolf lies broken, a dark presence begins to emerge from his body. The specter of the god of destruction looms over them, its true form revealed. Luca tightens his grip on the sacred sword, sensing the true enemy. A wave of revulsion washes over him as he faces the malevolent entity. Adolf cries out, wondering why his god's power has abandoned him. The god's empty eyes stare back, its power now focused entirely on Luca. With the fight over, Rebecca can only look on in exhausted relief. Luca stands over his defeated foe, his expression unreadable. Adolf can't comprehend what just happened, his power completely gone. He desperately begs Luca to wait, insisting that this is all over. He even offers to forgive Luca for leaving the party if he'll just stop. But the word forgive only seems to stoke Luca's cold fury. His eyes burn with hatred as he tells Adolf that he is the real curse. A memory surfaces of a time when he was too weak to even properly mourn his family. He remembers being mocked for his dream of becoming an adventurer, and he remembers Adolf's cruel generosity, forcing him to be grateful for the abuse. He remembers Adolf's sneer as he held Rebecca captive, calling her a nuisance. And he remembers the source of that cruelty, a god who demands the weak be crushed without mercy. But Luca declares that forgiveness is something he no longer needs. Adolf can only stare in disbelief, his power completely spent. With a final decisive flash of his blade, Luca recalls the moment his new life began, with a goddess glad that he was the one to find her. He remembers her offer to become her chosen agent. He remembers the little chameleon asking to join him on his journey. And he remembers the priest who prayed for his success. All of these memories fuel his resolve as he tightens his grip on the sacred sword. He remembers Rebecca's voice calling out his name, and her heartfelt thanks for everything he's done. His hand tightens around the hilt of the sacred sword. He knows he cannot let those precious memories be tainted by this darkness. With a final, decisive punch, he strikes his former leader down. The blow is imbued with a purifying power, meant to dispel the curse. He tells Adolf that this is payback for everything he put Rebecca through. His grip on the sacred blade is firm, his judgment absolute. But his true enemy is not the broken man on the ground, but the god looming over him. As the goddess's chosen agent, he vows that he will never forgive this malevolent deity. The specter of the god of destruction crumbles into nothingness. Luca stands alone in the quiet aftermath of the battle. He lowers the sacred sword, the weight of the fight finally settling in, a silent acknowledgement that this long nightmare is finally over. But his solitude is broken as Rebecca and her sister rush to his side. He finds himself caught between a concerned friend and a stoic goddess. Rebecca immediately scolds him for his recklessness, her relief mixed with anger. Just then, a group of guards arrives, having come to investigate the commotion. With the villains tied up, Rebecca continues to lecture a weary Luca about being more careful. He can only listen, finally understanding the depth of her concern. The innkeeper explains to the guards that he knew something was wrong when Luca rushed out alone. Meanwhile, Adolf and his companion are tied to a tree, their long history of cruelty finally catching up to them. A guard informs Rebecca that the guild will handle their punishment and asks for her official statement the next day. He offers to escort the sisters home, but Rebecca politely declines the offer. She explains they'll be fine, placing her complete trust in Luca to protect them. As they walk home under the moonlight, Luca carries a sleeping Katie on his back. Rebecca asks if her sister is too heavy, but he assures her it's no trouble at all. She then asks about his injuries, and he explains that the healing magic has left him feeling better than ever. With a heavy heart, she apologizes for dragging him into such a dangerous situation. But he insists it was Adolf's fragile pride, which only makes Rebecca more flustered as she complains about her ruined hair. But Rebecca continues her lecture, telling Luca that he's just as bad for getting used to fighting alone. And Luca can only agree, having no real defense for his actions. He apologizes profusely, realizing he was so focused on the fight that he didn't even hear her warnings. Rebecca panics, realizing that the goddess is just as angry as she is. Salamis tells him to reflect on his recklessness and to be grateful for Rebecca's help. But she softens her tone, admitting she would never stop him from trying to save someone. She reaffirms his mission, telling him to use her power to protect those who need it. The goddess then turns to Rebecca, expressing her relief that they were able to keep her and her sister safe. Rebecca offers a quiet, heartfelt confirmation. With Katie still asleep on his back, Luca thanks the goddess for choosing him. He turns to Rebecca, a gentle smile on his face. With the long night finally over, he tells her it's time to go home. She looks back at him, a blush on her cheeks as she quietly agrees. But elsewhere, another adventure is taking a much darker turn. A young adventurer scrambles backward in a panic, cursing whoever told him this dungeon would be an easy win. He's completely surrounded by skeletal monsters closing in from all sides. The terrified boy realizes he was fed the wrong information. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light erupts from behind him, and a cloaked figure is sent flying, crashing hard onto the dungeon floor. The boy's eyes fill with tears of pure terror. He finds himself surrounded by a swarm of giant, monstrous ants. But in another part of the world, a confident young adventurer stands ready. His companion smiles, equally sure of their own strength. Meanwhile, Luca's little chameleon enjoys a well-deserved snack, and Salamis watches over them with a serene expression. Back in the forest, the new adventurer faces down a massive red bear. He imbues his blade with a powerful enchantment and unleashes a devastating flurry of attacks. His combination of magic and swordsmanship is flawless, felling the beast with ease. He credits his victory to the powerful sword he now wields. A memory of the priest Eppo explains how the blade can channel magic without any problems. And so, Luca begins his journey toward the royal capital. But his companion on this journey is a little more boisterous. He can't help but praise her incredible precision with a bow. Rebecca confidently declares that with her along for the ride, this will be an easy win. As they walk, she complains about the gamey taste of bear meat, while Luca reflects on the dangers ahead. A memory surfaces of the day she first showed him her adventurer's license. He remembers his shock when she announced she was becoming an adventurer too. She had asked if he'd been hunting monsters to save up for his journey, and he'd simply agreed. She explains that with the monsters gone, her old job guarding the fields is no longer needed, so she looked into it and found a way to send money home through the guild. The chameleon asks if her family approved, and she confirms they were happy to support her. Luca listens, surprised by where this conversation is going. With a nervous blush, she finally works up the courage to ask if she could join him on his adventure. Luca looks down for a moment before admitting that's what he wants too. She immediately panics, telling him he doesn't have to feel obligated, but he gently takes her hand, telling her he's happy she asked. With a warm smile, he says it's something he had already decided on himself. Luca holds her hand, vowing that he'll never let her face danger like that again. But Rebecca just smiles, telling him he doesn't have to protect her. She insists he should focus on his own mission, leaving Luca a little surprised. She declares that her bow will always be there to guard his back, and he can't help but admire her strength. With tears in her eyes, she asks him to let her join him on his adventure. And with a joyful clasp of their hands, his first true friend officially becomes his first real party member. Sometime later, they're back on the road, cooking their latest catch over a campfire. Rebecca asks what their plan is once they reach the capital, and Luca suggests they raise their adventurer rank. He explains that a higher rank will give them access to information that could help them fight the god of destruction's influence. Rebecca listens, her expression a mix of concern and quiet support for the path he's chosen. She asks if the other gods have agents as dangerous as the one they just faced. Salamis explains that there are 10 gods in total, each with their own domain. She warns that the agents of destruction and death are particularly hostile, spreading war and plague across the land. The gods of nature are mostly neutral, but their agents can still cause conflict depending on their ideals. While the god of life is friendly to humanity, Salamis has had no contact with them since her statue was moved. Luca muses that it would be nice to find an ally to help them fight against the curse. But their conversation is suddenly cut short by a rustling in the nearby bushes. Rebecca asks what that sound was, her guard immediately up. Her sharp ears pick up the sound of distant voices and hurried footsteps, and she realizes that whatever it is, it's heading straight for them. A young adventurer and his companion find themselves cornered by a monstrous ant. The boy crushes a crystal in his hand, preparing to cast a spell. He unleashes a powerful pillar of ice that slams into the creature. The monster is instantly frozen solid, its attack completely neutralized. But instead of falling, its body simply disintegrates into dust, leaving only a single magic stone behind on the ground. The boy cautiously picks up the strange remnant. He confirms that it is indeed a magic stone, the monster's core. This phenomenon means a dungeon is growing, its monsters spilling into the outside world. And Luca realizes that such a dangerous place has been left unchecked so close to the royal capital. Rebecca realizes the voices they heard came from the same direction as the monsters. They decide to hurry and investigate the source of the commotion. Nearby, a monstrous ant scuttles through the undergrowth, part of a swarm that has cornered an older man and his young companion. He demands she use healing magic, but her injuries and a broken amulet prevent her from casting. With no other choice, the man unleashes a volley of fire lances, but the spells simply deflect off the creature's hardened carapaces. He stares in disbelief, his most powerful attack rendered useless. His companion shoves him back, urging him to escape while she holds them off. The man can only watch in horror as the creature closes in for the kill. But just as the monster strikes, a new figure is reflected in her terrified eyes. A massive torrent of water erupts from nowhere, washing the entire swarm away. She rushes to her companion's side, checking on his injured arm. The monstrous insects are tossed about helplessly by the sheer force of the magical assault, their hardened carapaces shattering under the immense pressure. She turns to see their savior standing behind them. Luca offers a gentle smile, glad that he arrived in time. The young woman thanks him with heartfelt relief for saving them from certain death. He then turns to the injured man, his hand already glowing with healing energy. The older man introduces himself as Orva, his arm now fully healed. He explains that his companion is Anne, the daughter of a prominent merchant. After a quick round of introductions, they all get acquainted. Luca asks what they're doing here, and Anne explains they were checking on a trade route after the dungeon appeared. She asks if the two of them are adventurers, a fact Luca quickly confirms. With a worried expression, she asks if they would be willing to help with their investigation. Luca can't turn a blind eye to their plight and agrees to investigate with them, and so, the newly formed group ventures deeper into the forest. He quickly spots the tracks of the monstrous ants in the grass. Anne points forward, realizing the source of the danger is just up ahead. They find the source, a cave entrance crawling with monstrous ants. From the bushes, Orva notes that the area is heavily guarded, but the little chameleon seems to be communicating with one of the creatures. Luca watches in confusion, unsure of what's happening. Suddenly, a dark energy erupts from the cave's entrance. Luca realizes he can feel the dungeon master's power even from this distance. Rebecca turns to Anne, worried by her sudden panic. Anne's face is pale with terror as she warns them a stampede is about to begin. The word stampede leaves both Luca and Rebecca completely bewildered. Orva explains that it's when a dungeon expands, spewing its monsters into the outside world. Anne explains that a stampede once wiped an entire nation off the map. Orva adds that the only way to stop it is to destroy the dungeon's core. But Anne looks down, admitting there's a major problem with that plan. She explains that finding the core in an unexplored dungeon is nearly impossible. Orva resigns himself to defending the town, unsure how long the threat will last. Anne clenches her fist, believing there's no way to avoid the damage now. Luca agrees that their situation is not looking good, but Anne points out that at least no one has been injured so far. Luca's expression hardens as he declares it's time for them to act. She suggests they take the magic stone to the capital's guild to issue an emergency quest. Orva asks if Luca really intends to stay behind and face the danger, but Luca declares that he and Rebecca will remain to ensure no more monsters escape. Anne panics at the thought, but Luca insists they can't just leave the dungeon unguarded. Orva agrees, telling Anne that they should trust them and deliver the message to the capital. With a heavy heart, she reluctantly agrees to the plan. She promises to deliver the warning to the guild without fail. Anne begs them not to do anything reckless, and Rebecca tells her to be careful on her journey. With the plan set, Orva and Anne depart for the capital, leaving Luca and Rebecca alone to face the growing threat from the cave. Luca wonders if they have enough time, learning from Selemus that the stampede will begin in just 2 days. Luca considers their options, knowing they have to clear the dungeon before the stampede. Selemus confirms they can destroy the core in time. but she warns that the monsters aren't the real problem here. She explains that something is accelerating the core's growth, forcing the stampede, and whatever it is, it's waiting for them in the dungeon's deepest chamber. Luca's eyes narrow with a new sense of resolve. Deep within the dungeon, an agent of the Earth God stands guard, a powerful warrior whose presence alone radiates immense strength. Back at the entrance, Luca and Rebecca prepare to enter the dungeon. Their first task is to deal with the guards and gather what they can. He unleashes a powerful torrent of water, blasting the guards away from the entrance. The monstrous ants are swept up in the swirling vortex, their carapaces shattering. Rebecca remarks that she's almost getting used to these incredible displays of power. Luca agrees, deciding that ice magic is the most efficient way to clear the path. He erects a massive wall of ice, freezing the entire swarm in its tracks. Now that he's more comfortable with his abilities, he decides to try combining his magic. He finds it strange that there are no more guards, but Selamis believes the core is being protected on the lowest level. His attention is then drawn to a small broken piece of equipment on the ground. His eyes widen in sudden realization. As he discovers a ransacked campsite, its contents scattered and stained. Luca grits his teeth, realizing someone was here before them. He uses his divine storage ability to collect the scattered items. With a determined look, he vows to deliver these belongings to the guild. Rebecca asks Selamis why an agent of the Earth God would cause a stampede. The goddess looks on thoughtfully, considering the question. She explains that dungeons are vital for the Earth God's domain, as they return magic to the land. But if a dungeon's core grows too powerful, it can cause a massive explosion, so a stampede is a safety measure to release excess energy. The Earth God would never turn a blind eye to the damage this causes, meaning this is a divine disaster that cannot be stopped. She warns Luca not to underestimate the Earth God's agent inside the dungeon. Luca recalls the other powers granted to him, divine magic and the ability to teleport to her sacred domain. And so, they begin their descent, a moment of fleeting peace before the true battle. Luca agrees with his goddess, knowing he must decide for himself how to use his power. From behind a pillar of ice, Rebecca asks if the coast is clear. He thanks her for gathering the magic stones from the defeated monsters. But their path forward is a dead end, forcing them to find another route. The two venture deeper into the labyrinthine corridors. They both admit they never would have attempted such a reckless feat on their own. Rebecca panics, realizing they have only 2 days to clear a dungeon that should take weeks. But Luca simply holds out his hand, ready to show her the solution. He uses his divine storage ability to carve a path straight through the solid rock wall. He explains his plan is to create a direct route by breaking through the thinnest parts of the dungeon walls. By creating his sacred domain as he goes, he can muffle the sound of falling rock and avoid detection. With Selamis mapping out the structure, they can easily find the fastest path to the bottom. Rebecca is amazed they can reach the lower levels so quickly, but knows they must proceed carefully from the 25th floor. After all, a massive number of monsters are waiting for them near the dungeon's core. Luca decides it's best to clear out any obstacles now, to avoid a confrontation with the Earth God's agent. He points out the correct path they'll need to take once they land. Rebecca looks down, a little worried about the sheer height of the drop, but she quickly brushes off the concern with a confident smile. And with that, she leaps into the chasm without a moment's hesitation. With a determined look, Luca declares it's time to move. The scene then shifts to the bustling royal capital of Albanel, where Orva and Anne have finally arrived at the Adventurers Guild. Inside, the hall is packed with adventurers waiting for their turn. Orva shoves his way through the crowd, trying to reach the front desk. He frantically tries to explain their urgent request to the receptionist, but another adventurer angrily tells the old man not to cut in line. His companion agrees, telling them to wait their turn like everyone else. Orva tries to explain that a new dungeon has appeared near the capital, and that a stampede is imminent, putting the entire city in grave danger. But the other adventurers just scoff at the old man's warning. One of them laughs, finding the whole situation ridiculous. He claims the area is heavily patrolled, so a stampede is out of the question. But a new voice cuts through the crowd as someone steps forward. A hooded woman says she understands their disbelief, but insists that this is an unprecedented emergency. She warns that if they don't prepare now, it will be too late to do anything. Anne steps in, explaining that the ants they fought were strong enough to repel fire magic. The man simply waves her off, calling her story nonsense. He condescendingly asks what little girl is trying to scare adults with tall tales. He tells them to get lost, refusing to entertain their ridiculous story. Anne's desperation grows, unable to make them understand the danger. She refuses to back down, pleading with them to listen to her warning. The other adventurers just stare, still completely unconvinced. She explains that this is an emergency quest of the highest priority. Her serious tone finally seems to get through to some of them, but their plea is interrupted by a new voice demanding to know about the Stampede. A guild official introduces the branch's guild master, a man named Edmund. The imposing figure confirms he is indeed the guild master of this branch. Anne looks on, her hope renewed now that someone in charge has arrived. Anne's eyes widen, caught off guard by the man's sudden appearance. She nervously asks who he is, her hand clutching her hood. The guildmaster tells her to get straight to the point. He asks for the dungeon's location and the basis for her stampede warning. She presents the magic stone as the only proof they have. A guild official takes the stone to begin her analysis, placing it within a magical device to ascertain its properties. She reports that it belongs to a silver ant, a monster with rank 3 stats, a creature far more powerful than its simple appearance suggests. The other adventurers are stunned, realizing a swarm of such beasts is on its way. Anne watches nervously as the commotion spreads through the guild. One adventurer even suggests it's better to just abandon the capital. But the guildmaster roars for silence, his voice cutting through the panic. He scolds them for cowering in the face of a mere rumor, reminding them that hunting monsters is their sworn duty as adventurers. Others chime in, telling the weak to stay back while the strong step forward. But Edmund's resolve remains unshaken by the chaos. He declares that a massive reward awaits those who defend the capital, appealing to their greed. His words stir their pride, their fear turning into a fierce determination. Anne looks on, relieved to see their expressions finally change. With a look of grim determination, the guildmaster takes charge. He roars that this is an emergency quest, igniting the crowd's fighting spirit. An official orders the news spread to all nearby guilds, summoning the strongest adventurers. A reconnaissance team of high-rank adventurers is to be formed immediately. Mages are ordered to head out first and erect a defensive barrier. The Merchants Guild is to be contacted for supplies and transport, and the blacksmiths are to provide every bow and spear they have. Edmund declares that the National Army must be alerted to the threat as well. He turns to Anne and Orva, a silent acknowledgement of their warning. Anne clenches her hand, relieved that their plea was finally heard. The guildmaster's confidence seems to have rallied the adventurers. With their warning delivered, Orva and Anne prepare to take their leave. Their next stop is another grand building in the capital. But as they walk, a small bird flies toward them with an urgent message. It lands on her arm, explaining that something terrible has happened. The creature begs her to return at once, saying she's been summoned. Anne sends the messenger off, telling it to buy her just a little more time. Orva turns to her, sensing that something is wrong. She can only worry about the two they left behind in the forest, but she reaffirms her faith in them, knowing they must trust in Luca's strength. 2 days later, a makeshift defensive line has been erected outside the capital. Adventurers and soldiers scramble to prepare, hauling supplies and taking their positions. A commander barks orders, telling his troops to prepare for a battle that will last through the night. From a watchtower, a lone lookout scans the horizon with a spyglass. He keeps a vigilant watch over the distant mountains, waiting for any sign of movement. But his eyes suddenly widen in sheer, unadulterated terror. A cold sweat drips down his face as he stares at the impossible sight before him. In the distance, a massive cloud of dust rises from behind the hills, signaling the approach of the monster stampede they were warned about. He drops his spyglass in a panic, grabbing a mallet to sound the alarm. With a panicked cry, he smashes the mallet against the alarm bell. The sound echoes across the field, a clear signal that the enemy has arrived. The first wave of monstrous ants crashes against their defensive line. The commander roars at his troops to brace themselves for the impact. The swarm of silver ants surges forward with terrifying speed and power. He vows that not a single one of them will be allowed to pass. But deep within the dungeon, Luca and Rebecca continue their own fight. Luca remains focused, knowing what he has to do to end this. Salamis confirms that the stampede on the surface has officially begun, and as the battle rages, the guild's defensive line is just barely holding on. Luca is confident that Anne has successfully delivered their warning. Now he knows it's up to them to finish this. Rebecca asks if the little chameleon will wait for them in the sacred domain, but the creature puffs itself up, ready and willing to join the fight. Luca turns to his companion, asking if she's ready for the final battle. With a confident smile, she confirms she's been prepared for a long time. They know that just ahead lies the dungeon's final area. Inside, the massive core is guarded by a giant queen ant and her swarm. Without a moment's hesitation, the two of them charge forward. Luca summons a path of ice, closing the distance in an instant. He slides forward, ready to strike the first blow. But the swarm of monstrous ants immediately descends upon them. While Rebecca weaves through the chaos, her arrows finding their marks. She leaps high into the air, taking aim at the massive queen below. But their assault is suddenly intercepted by the Earth God's agent. Luca's eyes widen in shock at the man's sudden appearance. The agent's gaze is cold and unwavering, a silent warning. He unleashes a powerful counterattack, sending Luca flying back. His movements are swift and powerful, rooted to the very earth. Luca stumbles back, stunned by the sheer force of the blow. Luca realizes this is the one responsible for the stampede. The Earth God's agent is just as surprised to find them here. He explains that he's here to destroy the core and stop the stampede before countless people die. He warns the agent not to stand in his way, but the agent declares that his only duty is to protect the core's growth. He tells them to give up, insisting they have no chance of winning. But Luca realizes the agent doesn't know he's facing another chosen one. He gives them one last chance to turn back if they value their lives, but seeing their resolve, he prepares to fight. The agent declares that he will show no mercy. Luca is stunned by the man's absolute resolve, but he tightens his grip on the sacred sword, preparing for the inevitable. The agent reminds him that he was given a fair warning, and with a sudden burst of speed, the two chosen ones finally clash in a shower of sparks. Luca struggles to hold his ground against the sheer force of the attack. The agent's eyes narrow, surprised by our boy's unexpected strength. But a powerful follow-up strike sends Luca's sword flying from his hand. He's left completely defenseless as the agent moves in for the final blow, but Luca is faster, leaping over the agent's head. And using the momentum to launch himself into the air, he calls out to his partner, signaling the next phase of their plan. The agent looks up, realizing he's just been baited. From above, Luca unleashes a massive spear of ice, aiming it directly at the defenseless queen ant. But the agent invokes his own divine power to protect his charge. A wall of jagged earth erupts from the ground, blocking the attack. But the new terrain gives Rebecca the perfect vantage point. She smirks, knowing there's no way he can block them both at once. Her arrow flies true, but not at the agent. Instead, it shatters the ice wall as she declares she won't let Luca destroy the core alone. The little chameleon puffs itself up, ready to play its part. With a determined look, she tosses the tiny creature into the air. The agent is forced to block another of Luca's attacks, but he's stunned to see Rebecca's arrow miss its intended target. His eyes narrow, realizing he's been played for a fool. Rebecca now stands ready with a dagger, her true plan in motion. The agent looks up in fury, seeing her standing atop the newly created ice pillar. Luca warns him not to even think about touching Rebecca. Luca thanks them both for creating this perfect opening. He tells them to brace themselves for what's coming next. He summons two massive elemental beasts of fire and ice. The two forces collide in a devastating explosion, but the agent stands completely unfazed by the massive attack. Luca is forced to leap back as the agent retaliates instantly. But our boy's expression remains firm and resolute. The agent's eyes narrow, unimpressed by the display. He scoffs, believing a simple distraction won't be enough to defeat him. Luca is forced to weave through a hail of deadly ice shards. But Luca grits his teeth, struggling to hold his ground against the agent's overwhelming power. Meanwhile, the little chameleon is sent flying through the air as part of their plan. The agent's eyes widen as he realizes the tiny creature was just a decoy. In that split second of confusion, Luca and Rebecca move in perfect sync to press their advantage. From her vantage point, Rebecca unleashes a massive ice spear of her own, but the agent simply blows it away with a gust of wind. He then closes the distance in an instant, grabbing Luca from behind. Rebecca lands on the ground, her part of the plan complete. But she can only look up in horror, screaming Luca's name as he's captured. The agent simply watches as the dust from their combined attack settles. But Luca is the one who's been thrown to the ground. He struggles to push himself up, his body battered and bruised. The force of the blow was simply overwhelming. The agent tells him that no matter how many times he tries, it's completely useless. But Luca clenches his fist, reminding him that countless lives are at stake. He screams that the stampede will kill so many people, asking if the agent feels nothing at all. The agent's expression remains cold and unfeeling. He simply replies that he feels nothing. He declares that he is just following his God's will, and the kingdom's fate is not his concern. He states that their lives are not even worth his consideration. But Luca's resolve only hardens in the face of such cruelty. He realizes that no matter what he says, this agent will never listen. So instead, he lets his power do the talking. His blade now glowing with divine energy. The agent is stunned, finally sensing the immense pressure radiating from our boy. Luca stands firm, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. He unleashes a new ability, a wave of power meant to bring a temporary peace. He reveals the truth, that he is an agent just like him. The agent looks up in horror as the queen ant begins to stir behind him. He realizes with dawning terror that Luca's attack wasn't aimed at him at all. Luca declares that if the agent dodges this, the core will be destroyed. He lets out a defiant roar, putting everything into this final push. He lunges forward, clashing blades with the agent one last time. He screams that if a god's will is to trample on the lives of others, then he has no need for such a cruel and twisted logic. The agent's eyes widen, his blade struggling against Luca's divine power, with a final, desperate shout for him to move. Luca pushes forward with every ounce of strength he has left. The sheer force of the blow sends the agent flying backward, and with his path now clear, the attack finally strikes the queen ant. The queen ant's hardened carapace shatters under the immense force. His blade tears right through the monstrous creature. As he roars that they should never look down on human life, a dark power surges from his body, the culmination of his resolve. The ability, Temporary Peace, cleaves through the queen ant completely. He reveals his final trump card, a skill that converts all damage he's taken into pure attack power. And with that final devastating blow, the dungeon's core crumbles into dust. Luca watches, confirming with his last bit of strength that their mission is complete. The immense strain of the battle finally catches up to him, and with the threat neutralized, our boy finally collapses to the ground. The Earth God's agent stands amidst the rubble, battered but not broken. He turns and begins to walk away from the crumbling cavern. He can't believe he was facing another agent all this time. He recalls hearing Rebecca call out Luca's name during the fight. The agent introduces himself as a seam. He vows that he will one day repay this debt, and with that, he vanishes into a fissure in the dungeon wall. The cavern falls silent in the aftermath of their battle. Luca can only watch, too exhausted to give chase. He wonders if the agent has truly retreated for good. Rebecca rushes to his side, screaming his name in a panic. He tries to give her a weak thumbs up, but she points out he's bleeding heavily. She immediately tries to apply pressure to the wound, her forceful attempt causing him to wince in pain. She frantically asks about potions or bandages, knowing he can't be okay, but Luca gently takes her hands, urging her to calm down. He insists his healing magic is already working and he's fine, but Rebecca's eyes fill with tears as she points out the bleeding hasn't stopped. He places his hand over hers, trying to convince her that it has. He admits he's pretty beaten up, but insists he's not in any real danger. But she scolds him, telling him not to try and fool her. He begs her to just be quiet and let him heal properly. She admits her heart is still pounding from the fear of losing him. She gently places a hand on his head, promising to do better next time. The sudden gentle touch leaves him a little flustered. She apologizes again for making him worry so much. With tears in her eyes, she asks him to just rest for a little longer. He quietly agrees, finally letting himself relax as she watches over him. But back on the surface, the battle for the capital is not going well. The final defensive line is breached, and the soldiers cry out in despair. The commander roars at his mages to use ice magic and hold the line at all costs. But the creatures are relentless, their sheer numbers threatening to overwhelm the barricade. The defenders can only watch in horror as the swarm continues its terrifying assault. But then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the monsters stop dead in their tracks. Their hardened carapaces begin to crack and crumble, disintegrating into dust before the adventurers' very eyes. The commander can only stare, completely baffled by this impossible turn of events. In the distance, a pillar of light descends from the heavens, signaling the end of the stampede. The next day, back at the guild, a familiar cloaked figure approaches the reception desk. He explains that he's here to turn in the belongings of the adventurers who fell in the dungeon. The receptionist promises to handle the belongings and deliver them to the families once they're identified. Luca simply thanks her, his expression gentle despite the grim task. The woman seems a little surprised by his earnestness, noting that he never complains. As she sorts through the items, she discovers a small metal tag. She realizes this will allow her to identify the owner of the belongings. The file confirms her suspicion. It belongs to a missing adventurer who never returned from a dungeon quest. But just as Luca and Rebecca turn to leave, the receptionist calls out for them to wait. The two find themselves sitting awkwardly, unsure of what's happening. Suddenly, the guildmaster, Edmund, appears before them with an intense stare. He asks if Luca is a rank 5 adventurer, and our boy admits he still lacks the experience to rank up. The guildmaster asks if they were the ones who recovered the items from the dungeon that caused the stampede. His gaze is sharp and intense, scrutinizing their every move. Luca nervously explains they just happened to find the items near the entrance. Edmund apologizes for summoning them so suddenly. He explains that the dungeon's appearance and the Stampede's abrupt end are a complete mystery. That's why he wanted to speak with the two people who were actually there. He then adds that he has a special request for them. The receptionist holds out a sealed letter, explaining it's for them. She clarifies that the letter is from Anne. The two look at each other, surprised, as the receptionist adds that Anne has been trying to reach them for a while. He thanks them for their warning and for their kindness in returning the fallen adventurer's belongings. Once Luca and Rebecca have left, the guildmaster and his assistant are left alone. The receptionist asks if it was wise to let them go without further questioning. She points out the discrepancy in their story, as two rank 5 adventurers claim to have only fought near the entrance. But her investigation team found signs of a massive battle deep inside, where the core was destroyed in a single blow. She also notes the appearance of a new exit, as if they were intentionally avoiding the reconnaissance team. Her thoughts turn back to the quiet adventurer named Luca. She reveals that her appraisal magic detected an immeasurable amount of power coming from him. It wouldn't be strange, she concludes, if he knew far more than he was letting on. Edmund agrees, determined to learn the truth and reward them properly if they truly stopped the Stampede. She explains that if they revealed their true power, they'd attract unwanted attention. For now, Edmund agrees to simply trust their story and let it go. But as they walk away, Luca knows they can't keep up the charade forever. The two leave the guild, finally free from the intense scrutiny. But once they're a safe distance away, they finally come to a stop. And the immense stress of the interrogation finally catches up to them. Rebecca worries their secret is out, but Luca doubts anyone would believe the truth. Still, he can't shake the feeling that the guildmaster saw right through them. They decide to put it out of their minds for now and get some rest. But their mood brightens as they remember the letter they received from Annie. Inside, Anne has invited them to an orphanage in the capital's West District. Rebecca is excited to see her again, suggesting they grab a bite to eat first. They decide to try a local specialty, a savory quiche pie. Their destination is an orphanage in the city's West District. A woman at the door welcomes them inside, explaining that Anne will be there shortly. Just then, Anne arrives, apologizing for making them wait. She leads them down a quiet hallway to a private room. They're offered tea and snacks, a welcome moment of peace after their ordeal. The little chameleon, however, seems to be enjoying itself a little too much. Rebecca looks down, startled by the creature's enthusiastic munching. Anne returns to the room, apologizing for having kept them waiting. She expresses her sincere relief that they are both safe and sound. But Luca is left completely bewildered by her sudden change in demeanor. Anne simply offers a gentle smile, understanding his confusion. An older woman then steps forward, explaining she's heard all about them from the princess. Anne then reveals her true identity as Henriette Albanel, the third princess of the kingdom. The news sends both Luca and Rebecca into a state of absolute shock. The princess seems rather amused by their panicked reaction. They immediately leap to their feet, apologizing profusely for their informal behavior. But she simply gestures for them to sit down, telling them to relax. The princess then formally thanks them for saving the entire kingdom from disaster. But Luca and Rebecca are still reeling from the revelation, completely flustered. They frantically try to deny their involvement, insisting they had nothing to do with clearing the dungeon. But the princess simply smiles, seeing right through their panicked act. She tells them to relax, asking them to speak with her as Anne, not as royalty. She explains that she heard from the guildmaster that no one has come forward to claim the victory. But she already knows the truth. After all, she saw Luca's incredible power with her own 2 eyes. Luca and Rebecca can only look on, finally realizing their cover is completely blown. With a warm smile, the princess offers her sincere and heartfelt gratitude. Luca and Rebecca are still trying to process this unbelievable turn of events. The princess explains there's one more person she'd like them to meet. She asks if they have time to see this person right now, and Luca agrees. The two of them quickly confirm that they're available. The princess smiles, pleased that she can introduce them to her friend. She gives a quick instruction to her attendant, who bows in acknowledgement. She then holds out her hands, asking them both to join with her. Luca is confused, but Rebecca seems to recognize this familiar sequence of events. They take her hands, and a brilliant light begins to form between them. In a flash, she teleports them all to another sacred domain. The princess tells them it's safe to look now. They find themselves in a sunlit field, surrounded by fluttering butterflies. She explains that she has brought them to this beautiful, secluded place. With a gentle gesture, she invites them to come forward. A massive leaf then lifts them from the ground, carrying them toward the gazebo. Inside, a young woman with long hair welcomes them, happy that they've come. Luca and Rebecca can only stare, completely stunned by this new development. The girl introduces herself as Melora, the goddess of life, welcoming them to her sacred domain. She then gives a playful wink, addressing the agent of Selemis directly. With a joyful leap, she thanks them for stopping the stampede and saving so many lives. Melora immediately embraces the two of them, much to Selemis's amusement. She happily welcomes Luca, glad that he's finally arrived. The two goddesses then share a joyful reunion of their own. Luca and Rebecca can only watch, still trying to understand what's happening. Selemis explains that she and Melora are old friends and were invited here as well. Melora then gestures for them all to sit, promising to reward them for their efforts. The little chameleon, meanwhile, has already found the dessert table. Rebecca is still in disbelief that Anne was secretly a princess all along. As they all sit down for tea, Melora wishes all the gods could get along as well as they do. But elsewhere, the Earth God broods, searching for another way to manage his domain. She explains that the Earth God's agents are fierce warriors, relieved that Luca was there to intervene. With a bright smile, she offers them her heartfelt gratitude. The princess then asks Luca about his next destination, but he admits he hasn't decided. She then suggests they should visit the nearby Lisley Kingdom. She describes it as a beautiful land, rich with nature and delicious food, but she adds that there might be something troublesome happening there. Luca agrees to investigate on his journey and asks for more details. She explains that her intelligence network has uncovered a dangerous labyrinth on the border, known as the Man-Eater. A place doesn't earn such a terrifying name without a very good reason. As the goddess of life, Melora asks him to stop whatever is needlessly preying on the innocent. She asks them to use their own judgment to deal with the threat. The princess adds her own plea, asking them to take on this mission. She explains that as royalty, she's unable to travel freely to other kingdoms. Melora adds that the princess is already overwhelmed with her duties at home. Luca listens intently, the weight of their request settling in. A memory surfaces of the disaster 4 years ago, when the god of destruction's agent attacked their kingdom. The princess has been using her own power to suppress the lingering curse. Her healing magic has been cast over the entire land to hold back the illness. But if she were to leave, the curse would spread, and countless more would fall ill. Hearing this, Luca's hand clenches with a new unspoken resolve. The princess explains she's developing a cure for the curse, hoping to finally bring peace to her kingdom. Rebecca is moved to tears, offering a quiet word of thanks. She remembers her own mother's long and painful struggle with that very same illness. The weight of this new information seems to strike Luca hard. Rebecca thanks the princess for protecting them all these years, until Luca could find a way to help. Their hands are clasped in a moment of shared understanding. The princess smiles, simply glad that she was able to be their strength. The goddess of life then asks if they will lend their power to this cause. Rebecca immediately declares she'll follow Luca anywhere, while Selemis leaves the final decision to him. And with a look of quiet resolve, Luca accepts his new mission. He tells them he'll handle the Man-Eater labyrinth, entrusting the kingdom to their care. The goddess of life seems thrilled by his decision, with Gelimus looking on with a gentle smile. He then asks Melora to share any information she finds on the god of destruction, a request she happily accepts. The princess eagerly agrees to help as well, ready to use her resources. With Rebecca and the princess by his side, a powerful new alliance is formed. Melora strikes a triumphant pose, declaring that their plan is officially set. She suggests they all work together, a sentiment Selemis quietly supports. Luca looks on, a faint smile on his face as their new path becomes clear. Even the little chameleon seems ready for the challenges that lie ahead. The princess promises to offer her full support for their journey from the capital. She provides them with detailed maps of the surrounding kingdoms, gathered by royal authority, along with a generous supply of travel funds and provisions for the road. She even gives them a full set of the capital's most popular adventuring gear. The sheer volume of guidebooks and information leaves both Luca and Rebecca completely speechless. Luca turns to Rebecca, surprised by how much she's already organized for their journey. The princess explains she had a wonderful time preparing everything, as she loves doing research. Rebecca seems lost in thought, dreaming of the adventures that await them. The princess then suggests that one day, the three of them should go on an adventure together, an idea that brings a smile to both Luca and Rebecca's faces. With a warm embrace, the princess thanks Rebecca, promising to welcome her back any time. And so, with their new mission set, Luca and Rebecca wave a final goodbye. The princess wishes them well on their journey, praying for their safe return. Their path takes them across the open sea. Toward the port city of Châtel and the Lisley Kingdom, the two adventurers look out at the horizon, ready for whatever comes next. But the sea air is colder than Rebecca expected. Luca explains that the Lisley Kingdom is much farther north, hence the sudden chill. Before long, their destination finally comes into view. She's grateful for the warm cloaks the princess provided and suggests they find a warm meal. According to their guide, the kingdom's rich nature also means more monsters and dungeons. Luca overhears a local mention the very labyrinth they've come to investigate. Nearby, a young boy begs for help finding someone, only to be told to ask somebody else. A girl explains that the person he's looking for went missing inside the dungeon. Rebecca's heart aches at the thought of losing someone so important, and Luca quietly agrees. His resolve hardens, knowing they must deal with the man-eater labyrinth as soon as possible. The young boy seems to have overheard them, a flicker of hope in his eyes. At the city gates, an official confirms their adventurer licenses are all in order. He welcomes them to Châtel and points them in the direction of the local guild. But just as they turn to leave, a sharp voice calls out, stopping them in their tracks. The girl from before stands before them, begging them to listen to her desperate plea. The young adventurer stands before them, their expression filled with desperation. They promise to repay them for their help, their voice filled with urgency. Rebecca recognizes the child from before, whispering to a concerned Luca. He gently tries to turn them down, explaining they're just here as tourists. But the kid looks up, asking if he would truly abandon someone in need. The question hits home, leaving both Luca and Rebecca completely speechless. The child's hopeful gaze waits for his answer, a silent plea in their eyes. With a sigh, Luca finally agrees to at least hear what they have to say. The young adventurer leads them to a nearby restaurant to explain the situation. Inside, a massive plate of food is served, immediately catching the chameleon's eye. The young adventurer introduces themselves as Noel, explaining they need help exploring the man-eater labyrinth. They tell Luca and Rebecca that the dungeon was once a safe place, frequently explored for its resources. Their hand tightens as they reveal their own parents used to explore that very dungeon. But 3 months ago, the monster threat suddenly escalated, and people began to disappear. Even the guild's official investigation team never returned, leaving Noel with no answers about their parents' fate. Now the labyrinth is a forbidden zone, but Noel refuses to simply give up. With a determined look, they declare they're ready for the worst and would rather search than wait helplessly. They've even done their own research, mapping out the dungeon's structure. Noel bows deeply, begging Luca and Rebecca to let them join the expedition. Rebecca turns to Luca, leaving the final, difficult decision in his hands. Luca considers the situation, knowing Noel will just go alone if he refuses. Noel confirms this, vowing to enter the labyrinth with or without their help. With a heavy sigh, Luca seems to have made his decision. The young adventurer waits, their gaze fixed on him. Defeated, Luca finally agrees to let Noel join them on their quest. And so, their party of 3 arrives at the entrance to the man-eater labyrinth. Inside, Noel immediately faces down a tusked beast. With a powerful downward slash, they cut the monster down in a single decisive blow. Without even a moment's hesitation, they're already looking for the next fight. But Rebecca quickly scolds Noel for rushing too far ahead. She understands their desire to find their parents, but warns them not to act alone. Noel simply points past her, asking if it's okay to leave Luca to handle things by himself. They turn just in time to see Luca unleash a devastating wave of magic, effortlessly wiping out the entire swarm in a single, overwhelming blast. Rebecca simply tells a stunned Noel that Luca is strong because he's one of the goddesses chosen. The young adventurer can only look on, trying to process this unbelievable revelation. With the path cleared, Luca tells them it's safe to move forward. Rebecca remarks that Noel is surprisingly skilled for their age, guessing they were taught by their parents. But Noel gets defensive, insisting they're not a kid and are just as capable as anyone else. Rebecca is stunned to learn Noel is actually 17, not a child. Noel explains that an item they ate in a dungeon stunted their physical growth. Luca asks what kind of power they received in exchange for such a price. But before Noel can answer, a magic circle appears beneath their feet. Luca immediately realizes they've stumbled into a magical trap. The circle erupts, unleashing a volley of sharp projectiles from all sides. Rebecca reacts in an instant, shoving Noel out of the line of fire. But Luca is faster, pulling them both out of the trap's deadly range. He holds them close, telling them to brace themselves for the impact. Noel looks up gratefully as Salamis warns Luca to be careful. Luca's eyes narrow, realizing the trap's true purpose. Salamis explains it's a one-way teleportation gate designed to forcibly send them elsewhere. As they're pulled in, Noel cries out that their parents must be on the other side. Rebecca warns that it's likely another trap, suggesting they should retreat. But Noel refuses to back down, telling them to stop right there. They struggle against Luca's grip, insisting they'll go through the portal alone. Rebecca quickly grabs their arm, trying to stop their reckless move. Noel looks back, offering a quiet word of thanks for her concern. but Luca pulls them both in tight, ordering them not to leave his side. With his resolve set, he declares they'll face whatever is on the other side together. He holds them both tight, bracing for whatever lies on the other side. In a flash of light, the dark dungeon is replaced by a bright, sunny sky. They land with a soft thud on a sandy beach. The three of them find themselves on a strange, tropical shore. They look around in a daze, completely bewildered by the sudden change. But their confusion is cut short as a massive figure looms over them. A new voice calls out, recognizing the giant as a familiar sight. A young boy runs up, apologizing for startling them with the sudden teleportation. He explains that they've been brought to an isolated island south of the continent. Luca is stunned as Selemus confirms they've been moved the distance of an entire country. Noel can only stare, completely stunned by their bizarre new surroundings. The new boy casually offers to take them back to the mainland, telling them not to worry. He boasts about his swimming skills, but Rebecca is immediately suspicious of this strange newcomer. With a confident smirk, he turns the question back on them. Luca steps forward, demanding to know who this mysterious boy is. With a playful wink, the boy introduces himself as Fairman. The scene flashes back to the dungeon, where Luca realizes the teleportation device is the true source of the labyrinth's danger. Back in the present, Furman leans in close, catching Luca completely off guard. He asks if our boy is interested in the device that brought them here. But Noel cuts in, bluntly stating they have no interest in his equipment. Noel explains they're just trying to find out if their parents, who were also sent here, are safe. But Fermin seems unconcerned, admitting he doesn't remember the faces of everyone who arrives. Noel's face lights up with hope, asking if that means their parents are all right. Fermin simply points off into the distance, telling them to look over there. He explains that the mainland is visible from here, a kingdom called Shield. He offers to send them over so they can continue their search, and Noel reluctantly agrees. Fermin then asks if they've heard any rumors about the Man-Eater Labyrinth, catching Luca completely off guard. A single word hangs in the air, a silent confirmation of the dungeon's reputation. Fermin's expression darkens as he says it's about time he showed up. He thanks them for the information and promises to send them to the mainland right away. Fermin points to a small boat, telling them it's their ride to the mainland. Rebecca looks to Luca for guidance, but he can't sense any hostility from the boy. Noel grows impatient, insisting they can't waste any more time and need to go. But Luca notices that Noel has been acting strangely ever since they arrived. They push forward, telling Luca to just hurry up and get moving. Luca questions how they're supposed to move the boat without any oars. Fermin simply takes off his shirt, explaining it's easier to swim this way. Luca can't believe he's serious, but Fermin just tells them it will be fine. With a powerful shove, he sends the boat flying into the water. The sheer force of the launch leaves the entire party completely stunned. He calls it the Super Express boat service as he sends them flying across the water. He then casually shouts that the boat is probably going to break, but he laughs it off, insisting he's made this trip dozens of times. The entire party screams back that his answer isn't helping at all. With a massive splash, their chaotic journey comes to an abrupt end. Fermin simply wipes his brow, completely unfazed by the ordeal. But Luca and the others are left completely exhausted on the shore. Luca tries to stop him, but Fermin is already preparing to leave. He turns to Noel, who simply shakes their head in resignation. And with a final wave, their bizarre guide heads back to his island alone. Luca can only wonder what that was all about, while Rebecca stretches after the ordeal. But Noel clenches their fist, thinking about the person they're truly after. They reveal that Asim, the Earth God's agent, is on that island to kill someone. Luca is stunned, demanding to know how Noel could possibly know that name. Noel simply explains that they can hear everything. A flashback reveals they gained this power by eating something in a dungeon, allowing them to hear thoughts as clearly as spoken words. That's how they knew Luca was an agent of a god. And it's how they knew Rebecca was one too, having heard her thoughts and witnessed her incredible skill. Luca realizes Noel must have overheard Fermin's thoughts, which is why they stopped him from asking questions. And back on the island, Fermin smirks, revealing he's not an agent of the Earth God, but chose not to kill the newcomers, sensing they were fellow agents and wanting to avoid a conflict. Noel apologizes for listening in on their thoughts without permission, but Luca tells them there's nothing to apologize for. In fact, he says he should be the one thanking them, admitting he never considered fighting another agent. A quiet word of thanks is all Noel can offer in return, but Luca is still troubled, realizing an agent's involvement makes this far more complicated. He decides to bring Noel along to his sacred domain to discuss their next move. In a flash, they arrive at the floating sanctuary of the goddess. Noel is completely stunned, having never seen such a place before, and on a balcony above, the goddess of peace awaits their arrival. Noel bows deeply, honored to finally meet the goddess in person. Selemis offers a warm welcome, formally introducing herself to Noel. She suggests they all sit down and organize their information over tea. Luca asks if Furman is truly an agent of the Earth God, just like Asim. Selemis admits she knows a little something about the mysterious young man. Noel explains they overheard Furman mention a name, Circus, but couldn't learn more. The name seems to strike a chord with Luca, who wonders if it's a clue. The goddess simply nods, confirming his suspicion. She reveals that Furman is without a doubt the chosen agent of the Sky God. The Sky God Circus purifies the atmosphere using the magic of living things, making him more benevolent than some. But the Earth God has no interest in life, viewing the Stampede as a necessary sacrifice for his domain. Selemis explains that the Sky and Earth gods are fundamentally opposed. Their agents, like Asim, are locked in a constant struggle. Luca can't believe agents would be forced to fight over such a thing. But Selemis clarifies that some gods will order their agents to eliminate any opposition. After all, it is in a god's nature to shape the world to their own liking. But she reaffirms that her own wish is simply for peace and to save lives. And as her chosen agent, Luca shares that very same goal. He declares they'll find a way to stop this divine war and save as many people as they can. Rebecca and the princess immediately offer their full support for his plan. But Luca knows it's only a matter of time before the Earth God's agent makes another move. Luca realizes the fastest way to stop this is to destroy the teleportation device. But Noel knows that would only draw the enemy's full attention, a terrifying last resort. Rebecca worries what will happen to the nearby towns if a battle between agents breaks out. The chameleon plays as Selemis notes the Sky God's followers can fly, expanding the potential battlefield. Looking at the map from the princess, Luca spots a town called Selemia nearby. The guidebook explains it's home to a grand cathedral, built where the goddess first descended to Earth. The name reminds Luca of his new ally, the priest Eppo. He knows just the person who might be able to help them. He suggests they find someone trustworthy to warn the town, but Rebecca knows a sudden warning from a stranger won't be believed. And so, a new plan is formed. Luca will head to the town to ensure its safety, while Furman seeks a way to negotiate. Selemis offers a warm smile, fully supporting Luca's proposed plan. Luca adds that once they reach Selemia, they can also search for Noel's family, a suggestion that leaves the young adventurer flustered. But Noel is secretly pleased that he remembered his promise to help. They're just glad they found the courage to ask for his help in the first place. Rebecca then pulls Luca aside, telling him there's something she needs to say. She whispers something in his ear, a secret meant to put his mind at ease. But her words only leave Luca confused, and Rebecca a flustered, shouting mess.